Hey there, Pastor Caleb here in the study, and today is part 3 of our series called Fighting Well. We've talked about how conflict is a reality of life. It's something that we experience in our families, among friends, coworkers, and confrontation or conflict is a catalyst that can either lead to growth or destruction. And so based on how we respond to conflict, we can either experience growth or we can experience more hardship. We've talked about two things so far. We've talked about first that if we're going to fight well, that we need to confront those who've hurt us. We need to go to the source. We need to let them know what they've done. Secondly, we need to open up dialogue. And so not only do we want to let them know what they've done wrong to hurt us, we want to give them the opportunity to respond and to make things right. And then today, I just want to talk briefly about the third thing that's important if we're going to fight well, and that is the gospel. The gospel is the good news that sinful, broken people like myself, like you, though we once were enemies of God because of the sin in our lives, we have been given the opportunity to be friends of God. We've gone from being enemies to friends through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. And so when we talk about conflict, when we talk about fighting well, what we need to keep in mind is that people like us who have experienced the grace of God can now share that very same grace. In 2 Corinthians 5:18 through 19, this is what we find Paul writing. He says, "All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation." And so we see here that God has not only reconciled us back to himself through Jesus, but now he has given us the responsibility of reconciling other people. The word reconcile originally had the thought or the meaning of the exchange of coins. And so it's the idea that the relationship is being exchanged from a place of hostility and of being an enemy to a place of friend or to ending the conflict. And so there's an exchange or a change that happens. And based on these verses, we understand that through Jesus, a change has occurred. We've gone from being the enemies of God to being his friends. And so God has given us the responsibility when conflict arises to pursue reconciliation, to seek to restore relationships with people because we ourselves have experienced the restoration of a relationship with God. Erica Geiger in Transformational Groups writes this: God's grace molds us into the image of Jesus. So as we experience grace, extending grace becomes less complicated. So the idea is if I've experienced the grace of God through Jesus, then it becomes less difficult and complicated for me to show grace to others who've hurt me. The goal of confrontation isn't to be right. It's to experience a change in a relationship that leads to friendship. Fighting well happens when people who have experienced grace extend grace. And so the bottom line today is this: the gospel is necessary for fighting well. So let's be people who fight well and utilize conflict as an opportunity for growth. Thanks for joining us in the study today. Take care.